All right, folks. The World Health Organization says the Omicron variant is spreading faster than the Delta variant, and is it causing infections all across the world, even those who are vaccinated and have previously recovered from the virus. A lot of new mandates coming down. The mayor of Washington, D.C., Muriel Bowser, has reinstated the indoor mask mandate, declaring a state of emergency as a result of a record number of new infections. Also, there are booster mandates in D.C. As well. Folks, it begins tomorrow and it's going to go through January 31st, 2022. Now, here's where we stand in terms of the overall numbers. 52 million reported cases of coronavirus. Folks, since this pandemic started, 827,343 people have passed away as a result of COVID-19. Now, according to the CDC, 61.4% of the population in the U.S., they are fully vaccinated against COVID. Now, remember, fully vaccinated means 2 shots. Now they're talking about adding the whole idea of the booster to now actually meaning fully vaccinated. When you add that in, that number drops in a significant way. So what is it about Omicron that makes this thing so different? Joining us right now, Dr. Tyson Bell, a critical care and infectious disease specialist from the University of Virginia. Dr. Joseph L. Graves, Jr., Professor of Biological Sciences at North Carolina A&T. Glad to have both of you on today's show. So, Dr. Bell, I'll start with you. This is what Omicron is doing is shocking. Frankly, a lot of folks who say they did not expect to see it to be this contagious. I posted this on social media. I tested positive on Saturday after testing negative on Thursday. And when my symptoms started on Wednesday, my doctors traced it back to essentially I probably was infected when I was on vacation in Hawaii. And so I want to ask you that because, again, a lot of people, we have all of these people who have thrown all kinds of different stuff out. And so let's sort of deal with that. How are you tracking when you think someone may have caught COVID? Is it 10 days back from they first having symptoms? Exactly. How do you all make that determination?
Well, good question, because you can't really tell what variant you may be infected with based on symptoms alone.
Right.
And the testing, very important, right? So depending on if you have symptoms, that's your day zero, so to speak, or when they start, or if you don't have symptoms, it starts from when your test was positive. So that's when that quarantine period starts. But there's not really a symptom that would make one think that you have Omicron versus Delta. Frankly, they're both problems. So it would start from either symptoms or your test.
But isn't this also part of the problem? Because, so perfect example, I had a scratchy throat on Wednesday. We did the show on Wednesday from Atlanta about 9:15. I said, man, give me something to drink. I said, my throat is scratchy. And then, went back to our Airbnb, woke up. I had some chills. I took a home kit test. It was negative. Take the next test 36 hours later. We have a staffer who actually diagnosed with bronchitis. Then, of course, again, clear, but all of a sudden over the weekend, test positive for COVID. You have some others who say they think it's allergies, or they think it's a cold. And so it's sort of like it's just difficult, folks, to understand that that all of a sudden, if you get a symptom, folks are saying, well, okay, what do I do? Do I immediately shut down? Do I immediately isolate? If I, like in my case, I had a symptom, but then I test negative. So what does the person do?
Right. And you actually, that's goes to an important topic, that there are some signs with some of the rapid tests that in the early days of Omicron, they may not be as good as picking up on infection. So the PCR, or the laboratory test, that's the one that you might have to go to a clinic or a doctor's office for. That's the one that's the most sensitive. That's the gold standard. So if you have symptoms and that rapid test is negative, I wouldn't necessarily say that we're done with it. I would try to get that follow-up test.
And so I'll give you a perfect example. So I'm in Atlanta. I was calling all around, could not find a location to get that PCR test. Where we are right now in this country, we're seeing massive lines all across the country. We're seeing home kits being sold out. Here we are about to go into 2022. And frankly, we as a country still have not been properly positioned to confront this pandemic. I mean, the fact that I'm seeing videos of people, 100, 200, 300 people in line, cars backed up, unable to find locations. I mean, we are still behind the 8 ball on this for some reason.
I mean, there's a lot of blame to go around. I would add, in addition to the lack of rapid testing for everyone, we don't have the sequencing capability that other countries like in the UK have in order to even pick up on the Omicron variant. So there's a lot of things that we need to be doing better, and expanding rapid testing is definitely one of them.
First of all, Dr. Graves, I want to bring you in. So when we had you on last year, one of the things that you made clear was that, look, you're going to have these variants. So what exactly is the Omicron variant? And when I see this story, to say the Wall Street Journal had a story right before I came on that 73% of all cases are now Omicron variant. First of all, how do you know that? And what makes this so different?
The only way you would know that is by sequencing the patients. And as Dr. Bell pointed out, in the United States, our sequencing efforts are really not up to snuff. But what we do know at this point is that the Omicron variant is 5 times more transmissible than the Delta variant. And the Delta variant was very transmissible. And so, I hate to sound like a broken record, because you and I have been having this conversation since the beginning of this pandemic. And I have consistently warned people that unless we drove down the number of infected individuals in the United States and worldwide, we would continue to see the evolution of new variants. And in the case of the Omicron variant, there are close to 400 mutations in the spike protein. And that's why it's, on one hand, more transmissible, but it comes at the expense of being less virulent. But that's not a reason to celebrate. because it's still quite deadly, particularly for people who have pre-existing conditions. And also, the Omicron variant has the capacity to continue to evolve such that it may retain its transmissibility, but also then gain the sort of virulence that you see in the Delta variant. And so, we're back to square one on some really basic things, which are people in the United States need to begin to take COVID seriously. And if we don't, if we continue to be a culture of chicken little, actually there's a wrong analogy. I'm looking for the ostrich with his head in the sand. This is going to continue, and more people are going to die. It's really that simple.
And okay, so what you laid out there, and so if it is, and first, why is it 5 times more contagious? And with that the case, and look, I mean, I've gotten text messages from people, other individuals who are prominent, who have actually tested positive, who have not gone public like I have, and I mean, I've had folks who said they've been at other events, and then next thing you know, these things have turned into super spreader events. And so for people out there, okay, what should we be doing though? What exactly should we be doing?
Well, it's easy to explain what we should be doing. And that's, again, people in public health have been making these arguments for a long time now. And that is, we need to continue with mask mandates. We shouldn't be gathering large groups of people, particularly with the Omicron variant now beginning to take over COVID transmission. We should not be gathering large groups of people in closed spaces. It's just a wrong idea. And once again, Roland, I hate to say it, but we're at a place where folks are thinking that their money is more important than people's lives. And so they don't want to face the hard truths of this is a very dangerous virus that will continue to evolve and may get even worse than it currently is, either with regard to its ability to transmit or its ability to make people really sick. So unless we are willing to say that we as a nation are going to take the political and moral courage it takes to put an end to this pandemic, we're going to keep going on this merry-go-round of things getting slightly better, and then everybody wants to open up, and then all of a sudden a new variant comes along, and then we're back in crisis mode. I mean, here in North Carolina, hospitals are already beginning to fill up with Omicron cases, and New York yesterday had over 21,000 cases. So it's this lack of a consistent policy, and it's a lack of this willingness to basically do what's right with regard to the health and well-being of people in the United States and around the world, which keeps us coming back to these conversations. And again, I feel like I'm a broken record, but this is a record that's going to keep playing as long as people are unwilling to do what we need to do to stop this pandemic.
So Dr. Tyson Bell, when we talk about, okay, how do we deal with it? Okay, so I just took my temperature, it's 97.9. Last week, it spiked to a fever of about 103. While in Atlanta, I took the monoclonal antibody infusion. Okay, so if we're talking about healing from this, and I can tell you for folks, they can actually hear my voice. In many ways, this feels like when I have allergies. Okay, stuffy nose, some congestion, don't have fatigue, don't have any of those things, and so here I am in my. Luckily, I got a studio in my basement, so I'm here. Wife's upstairs, so I'm locked off. So, what is this then? Period. So let's say, okay, people all of a sudden becoming positive. How long then should they simply be self-isolating? What's that process? And how does one know you're getting better? What then happens?
Right. So the recommended isolation period is 10 days if you're positive. So that would either be 10 days from when your symptoms started, or if you did not have symptoms, 10 days from your positive test. You don't have to be completely better, but you should have your fevers. They should be gone by that point. You should generally feel your energy starting to come back. Again, you might not be at 100%, but if you're on that road to recovery, if you're on the mend and your fevers are gone without taking things like Tylenol or Advil or Motrin, then that's a sure sign that you're kind of kicking it. The usual infectious periods in the first week usually. So that first 3 to 5 days is when it starts, but then it goes down and the virus levels do for most people, assuming you don't have any immunocompromising conditions or on medications like that. So I would say 10 days for most people.
And of course, watching out to make sure no shortness of breath, things along those lines. There's no turn in terms of symptoms.
Exactly. And then while we're at it, let's just make one thing clear that the vaccine, I know you've received the vaccine. It's still working. I mean, the vaccines are never perfect. We never said that they were. They mostly are very good at keeping out of the hospital. I mean, it's not like you have antibodies that can run ahead and drop kick the virus before it interacts with you. Like you can still get sick. But the point is, it activates your immune system much earlier than it would otherwise, and it decreases your chances of having a serious illness so that you can actually, be positive, have COVID, and you can still do a show.
And the thing, I think the point that Dr. Graves you made is so on point, that the real issue that we have in this country, it has been schizophrenic. You've had all of these people who put pressure. Okay, got to open up, got to open up, got to open up. And then they say, what's the big deal? We got to move on. It's destroying the economy. It's all of that. But then, to your point, spike. So everybody's like, okay, my goodness, we got to shut back down. And I just think I personally think that we're still operating behind the curve, because we had the idiots in the Trump administration who screwed this up from the beginning. You did not have massive testing across the country. The initial CDC test was a joke. Okay, it was problems with that. And so all of this talk, remember, people have the massive testing centers in parking lots, stuff along those lines. That didn't happen. Now you have people who've been saying that at the White House or the federal government should be sending home kits to every American household. I don't understand why that's a controversial thing if you're trying to deal with an international pandemic. Because and then what did they say? Oh, the cost. I'm sitting there going, really? We just literally just passed an $8 trillion defense bill. And you're telling me you're talking about the cost of sending at home kits. And so not only that, that those antibodies, it was difficult. It was difficult to find when I was in Atlanta. I mean, we were calling all over. I was talking to Dr. Ebony Hilton, others here in Virginia, saying, well, what if I get it when I come back to Virginia? She was like, ain't not sure it's going to happen here as well. So here we still, as a nation, as our total infrastructure, are ill prepared for what is going on. And it's as if it's just like a patchwork every single day.
Well, protecting people from COVID is a national defense issue, and it needs to be treated that way. And I keep trying to bring home the fact that as viruses go, COVID is not as bad as what's out there. I mean, it's bad, but we have other viruses that can be next up in terms of their ability to become pandemic, and their symptoms and their mortality is going to be much, much worse than COVID. So if we don't put in place the biomedical research and medical public health infrastructure to deal with these emerging pandemics, the next time around, things could be really worse. And I also want to drive home that right now, the vaccines are holding up against the Omicron variant. But as the virus continues to evolve, there is a real possibility that we're going to get a variant that escapes control by the vaccines, and then we really won't be prepared. So we're at a moment, again, where we have the opportunity to try to get things under control, but it takes a concerted national effort. And folks that have been out publicly against vaccines need to basically change their tune. They need to start coming out and telling their supporters that they need to get vaccinated so that we can get this country back on track.
Dr. Bell, on that point, it was interesting when I posted on Saturday about testing positive. I had folks come on my Instagram page, others saying, well, I hope you're not sitting here mentioning that crap about vaccines. And I'm like, you damn right I am. I said, I don't give a damn what any of y'all critics think. I said, and I made it clear, every critic of the vaccine can literally kiss my ass. Because the bottom line is this here. There is no way in hell you're going to sit here and tell me that I'm not going to be trying to figure out every way to be fully protected. And that means the vaccine, that's the booster. I was scheduled to get my booster December 28th. But I still know someone who vaccinated and boosted who also got COVID. And here's the problem, Dr. Bell. I think part of it still goes back to when we first started. So many people were under the assumption or were led to believe that the vaccine was the cure. And so I think there's this whole deal here in people's minds. Well, you like I had some idiot, some loudmouth, who did a video on me. Oh, see, he out there promoting vaccines and he got it. I'm like, well, yeah, fool. Like, it's there. So explain. So I need both of you to please explain to these loudmouth nutcases exactly what the purpose of the vaccine is. And it is not a cure. There's no thing that's going to completely protect you from not getting it. It is designed to ensure, frankly, you're not going to be on a ventilator if you do get it.
I think the easiest way to explain this is just to talk about what I've seen in my ICU. So if we look at last year and we were seeing the impact that it had, basically everyone, every age group, every demographic, disproportionately African-American, Latino, and underserved communities, as we talked about a lot on this show. But we rolled out vaccines to these communities. And now in my community, Black and Latino communities are highly vaccinated. So who are we seeing now in the ICU? It's unvaccinated people. I'm not seeing any more 20, 30, 40, 50, 60-year-old people who are fully vaccinated. It's all unvaccinated people. There are a few breakthrough infections and people who have these compromising conditions, but it is mostly unvaccinated people. So the face of the pandemic, at least for people who are severely ill, has changed in my ICU.
Dr. Graves?
Yeah, I mean, I really can't add to that because the facts and the logic of this are so clear that I'm trying to find a way to speak to someone who doesn't utilize logic at all to understand the situation. It's simple. The vaccines are effective and safe. We are now seeing that people who have been vaccinated and people who have gotten boosters are less likely to catch COVID. And if they catch COVID, they're less likely to get very sick from it. We also have a complete opposite case of people who are unvaccinated. They're more likely to catch COVID and they're more likely to get very sick from it and they're more likely to die from it. It's as clear as I would say the nose on my face. I don't know what else to say. There are things called facts. I mean, it's these anti-vaxxers are equivalent to people who are arguing, well, that actually the earth is flat. That's the type of argument that they're making, that the earth is flat. No matter what evidence you provide for them, they will still adhere to the idea that the earth is flat.
I want you to reiterate that point again, Dr. Bell, what is happening now with our hospitals. I've seen numerous reports that the hospitals are filling up, and largely the people who are coming in are folks who are unvaccinated. Yeah,
I mean, I have just last week, we had a couple of young people that were in. So folks who are in their 30s, they have young children, they're unvaccinated. I ask everyone, assuming they're able to talk with me, I ask them, why didn't you get vaccinated? A lot of times as people say, I didn't think I needed to, I'm healthy, I take vitamins and things like that, that's good to do. But this is a global pandemic that has killed millions of people. And the vaccines offer extremely good protection from being severely ill. So it's the best decision you can make right now to go ahead and get vaccinated, because like I said before, what I'm seeing in the ICU were unvaccinated people who are getting critically ill.
All right, then, gentlemen, I appreciate it. This is one of the reasons why, we made a point from the beginning to have our top Black medical experts on talking about this stuff so people understand and they're getting real information. Dr. Tyson Bell, University of Virginia, Dr. Joseph Graves at North Carolina A&T. We appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Feel better.
Hope we don't have to do this again.
Well, guess what? I think we're going to have to, and we're going to keep hammering it. And for every person who keeps telling me, stop talking about it and stop promoting the vaccine, I'm going to tell them, shut up. Because it ain't going to happen. Back to that road mark unfiltered video in just one moment.
time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punching!
Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, there's a difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way. Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all.
I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
You dig?
And, you know, when we're talking about the vaccines, we're talking about all of this. Now we're seeing the CDC came out and said that 79% of the Omicron the Omicron cases are with vaccinated people. So now the narrative changed again. Oh, it's not the pandemic of the unvaccinated. It's a pandemic that we all face. Come on, this is a bunch of bullshit. And it's sad because why? The human lives are being politicized. We are like in recent, you said the Matrix, and I saw the Matrix yesterday. We are in that Matrix. We are being used. We are being bamboozled, as Malcolm X said. We are being pushed around, and we got to wake up to the fact that this is the modern day America that we're currently living in. This is a very, very serious and dangerous time that we're living in. And as much as we want to laugh, and much I want to say this man is an idiot, and much as I don't have a love for really, anything for Candace Owens, the fact is people are following and listening to them, and more importantly, believe in their vision of America. We got a serious problem.
The issue that we're facing right now is one, we talk about the issue of vaccinated versus unvaccinated. It's really right now what's happening to our hospital system. We're going to be having Dr. Peltz joining us shortly, and that is the people who currently are in ICUs and the people who currently are passing away. 4 out of the 5 people who are dying of COVID are those who are unvaccinated. So the problem that we're facing right now is, again, as somebody who's sitting here who got diagnosed with COVID positive test on Saturday, not having to go to the hospital, having the mild symptoms, that's also now where we are. The stresses that are still being put on our health system, the concern, and once Dr. joined us, the concern that we have now over this Christmas season coming up, with people traveling, folks going home, is who are the people who are going to be rushing into rushing into the hospitals. That's really where we are right now, and that's of great concern.
That's true, Roland. I mean, first of all, brother, when you let us all know that you had taken and contracted the virus, I think it's sent a shockwave. But I'm gonna tell you, man, as you say, you're not in the hospital, thank God, and that's because you've been vaccinated and had scheduled your booster. I've been vaccinated. I got the booster several weeks ago now, and I went and got tested around the corner, which is as a matter of course. And I'm gonna tell you, and I know we've all seen the same things. The lines outside the testing places are stretching everywhere. People are terrified, and I'm sure we're all getting, Reese, Faraji, Roland, I'm sure we're all getting message after message every day from friends and families and acquaintances who are finding that they've contracted the coronavirus, or they know people who have, and it's Omicron, and it's spreading like wildfire. Harvard has said they're going to go online for the first part of 2022. I expect Howard and everybody else is going to do the same thing. And finally, we're faced with it's not, as you say, Faraji, it's not just a pandemic of the unvaccinated. However, For every person who is out there unvaccinated, and I'm sure we've all heard these stories. I've heard a lot of my doctor friends of people who are desperate because they have contracted the coronavirus. They were unvaccinated. Some of them have passed away. But for every person who walks into an ER in a hospital in that situation, there's somebody else with all of the other procedures, all the other emergencies that we have who can't get in the hospital. And this healthcare system has never been robust. It is going to be overwhelmed. And I don't know about y'all, but I'm sensing there's a real panic that's spreading in this country over the last couple of weeks.
And you know what? Let me just
can I say something though too? Because
Rishi, then Faraji, go.
Yeah, and you know, Faraji, I take issue with the narrative, the pandemic of the unvaccinated, because I have an unvaccinated 8-month-old, and the fact that you have children under 5 years of age who don't have the ability to get vaccinated is very distressing, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of movement there. I don't think that it's okay the way that the testing has not been scaled up. I mean, the CVSs around my house have stopped doing COVID testing. I went to get a rapid test on Friday from the CVS. There were plenty of kits. By Monday, there were no kits available to take from home. So there are so many things that we need to be doing. It can't all fall under the federal government. There are Republican governors, for instance, that are obstructing the COVID pandemic response. But the bottom line is that we all have a shared vested interest, and that's why it's called public health, and seeing to the end of this pandemic. But the reason why so many people are getting getting COVID despite being vaccinated is because most of the country is fully vaccinated, and the efficacy wanes after about 6 months, which is why we need boosters, and the messaging behind that has been disastrous. So I agree with you, Faraji, about this whole pandemic of the unvaccinated. I don't think it's constructive or helpful, but I think that it's one of the vaccine is a very major tool in our toolkit, and boosters is a very major tool, and people who are willing to get it, I'm not going to get into all the stuff about people that don't want to get it, but people who are willing to get it, get your booster shot. And, you know, make sure you're doing more testing to protect you and your family.
I mean, I had COVID. My family and I had COVID back in August of this year, and we're unvaccinated. I'm going to just say it. We're unvaccinated. And, you know, I thank God that we were blessed to get through it, and that we weren't hospitalized or anything like that. And so, you know, I think that we have to look at what alternative means, what other things are going to be done. I don't like the fact that, you know, we can go back and forth and say vaccinated versus unvaccinated. But what I'm seeing out of this family is that, you know, you got a country that is going at odds and at war with one another over drugs. Now they have just approved, the FDA just approved the pills from Pfizer, the I think it's called Paxlovid, the new pill that's going to be out. The FDA just approved Merck's pill. Now we have from vaccines and booster shots. Now we're getting pills now. And I mean, it's just a very, very, the conversation around medication and the efficacy of this whole process is still very shoddy. You know, we're hearing some stories about people are still, you know, are starting to experience some side effects and some very severe consequences. But my point is that we're still
hold on. You said we're hearing that people are experiencing some serious side effects. What? That's a general statement.
So from side effects from boosters, you know, like people are, you know, my wife's friend mother had just gotten her booster shot, and she had a breathing problem. You know, she was saying like I got vaccinated, I got my booster shot, and I had a breathing problem. And look, I'm not going to go back and forth about vaccinated and unvaccinated. I think that's all comes down to your personal choice. But I do want to say that if we're looking at where this country is going and how this thing is moving, it's like we are all being, just like they say in the Matrix, sheeple. You know what I mean? We're just being shuffled along and being told, hey, we need to do it this way, we need to do it that way. And then what? Then you have a variant like Omicron that they're saying, hey, the vaccine may not be quite as effective.
But the issue when you talk about being shuffled, the issue that the greatest issue that people are concerned about is being shuffled to graveyards. When you have
Yeah, but
800,
see, but you and I know, Brother Roland.
no, hold on.
I get that. Like I said, I had COVID too, Brother Roland.
Hold on. But when we have 827,000 people who've died, that's one.
Right.
When you have right now, the number of people who are in hospitals, who are in ICUs, who are requiring hospitalization, and then when you look at who are the individuals that are there, first of all, out of the 1 out of 5 people who has passed away, they've actually been vaccinated. That in terms of, that means 4 out of 5 in 2021, 4 out of the 5 people who have passed away as a result of COVID have not been vaccinated. Then you also put on top of that pre-existing conditions, things along those lines. There's some people who have autoimmune deficiencies. They might have kidney issues and other things as well. And so you're dealing with that. What we are dealing with though, it is reality. And in reality that I keep saying is ain't no flip side to death. And so where people are right now, and so here are some basic questions that people got to be asking themselves. If a person chooses not to get vaccinated, should they be first in line at a hospital?
That's if they have to go.
No. But if they do, if they chose not to get vaccinated, then to Greg's point,
So wait,
when they're one second.
Yes, sir.
1 second. To Greg's point, because of where we are with ICUs, there are people who need those beds.
That's right.
People who need surgeries who are unable to do so as a result of individuals with COVID taking up ICU beds. That's a real issue. We've had doctors on our show talk about they are facing that. How do we deal with that?
When you're talking about who has access, I mean, are we living in a country now that we determine, okay, you come into the hospital, what's your status?
No. I asked a very specific question. For instance, there was a man who had pancreatitis in Texas. Okay, he had pancreatitis in Texas. Easily should have survived because of the lack of ICU beds. There was not an ICU bed in a 100-mile radius of where he lived. He eventually passed away. Many of those people who were in ICUs were people who were unvaccinated who had COVID. And so I'm asking a question, and that is, how do we deal with that if individuals have chosen not to get vaccinated, but are so sick they're taking up ICU beds? What decisions should we make?
I mean, I think it comes down to what you're saying, Brother Roland. That man had pancreatic cancer. I don't know the condition.
No. He did not have pancreatic cancer. He had pancreatitis. That's different.
Okay. Yes, sir. My point is, if his condition is as severe that he needed to be hospitalized, we don't know, and I don't know the condition of the unvaccinated who had used up those beds in that case. I don't know. Maybe their condition was more severe. I can't, and I'm not saying that he deserved to die, because I don't think anybody deserves to die if you have access to if you can get the care that you need. But I do know that we have to just take it, I think, by case basis. We can't just paint a broad stroke and make a general assessment about the situation like this as if people want to put other people's lives at risk. It's not that. And I mean, I know we say public health, but people do have the choice to make the decisions that they need to make. If we're saying public health, doesn't that rest on choice?
But a person's choice, but a individual's choice is having an impact on other individuals. Greg, you were trying to get in.
Same thing. We can say the same thing about smoking. We can say the same thing about smoking. We can say the same thing about other
in public places.
Yeah, but people still smoke. You know, Reese. You know, people smoke wherever they want to go.
But there's been a massive shift in public policy, public health policy over the issue of smoking. Greg, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll just keep this very quick, Roland. And again, this is and we say this every night in this space. This is why the Black Star Network is so important. I'm not a medical doctor. I don't even pretend to be one. I have had over the last almost 30 years now of teaching a number of students who've gone out to medical school who practice. I have a number of friends, like we all do, who are medical doctors, who are researchers. But when I watch night after night on this show, you bring in Black doctors, researchers, our man at North Carolina A&T, the brother out of Mississippi, Ebony Jade, all over and over and over again. It confirms what I think probably all of us are hearing from our friends and comrades who are medical doctors. I'm all the time from Atlanta, from Baltimore, from Dallas, from New York City, story after story after story that the ERs are being overwhelmed. I'm talking about doctors. See, I'm not a doctor. So the best I can do, I'm not about to try to go replicate the research of doctors. There's a story out now, of course, about the scientists at Walter Reed who apparently are saying they've invented a super vaccine that's going to protect you against. But I'm not, to the point you always make, Reese, I'm not going to accept that. I don't know if I can vet that. I'm looking at the news outlets it's coming from. But I know one thing for sure. I can tune into this channel and look and listen to doctors who look like me, who sound like me, who have been through the same experiences I have been, and I can weigh what they say against what I'm hearing from all kind of people who are medical professionals, and I would rather base my informed opinion on what they are saying than attempt to wade into a field that it takes people literally decades of study just to be able to walk in the door to have an opinion. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Now, can I say something too, Roland?
Now we do have folks who don't look like us who I appreciate coming on the show.
Oh, no question. No question.
Dr. Peter Hotez is co-director of the Center for Vaccine Development at Texas Children's Hospital in Houston, my hometown. Always glad to have him here. And Doc, give us a sense of where we are. Look, we keep hearing Omicron versus Delta. We're seeing cases explode. As I said, I'm sitting here in quarantine right now, testing positive for COVID on Saturday. But pretty much feeling, still a little stuffy nose, still occasional cough, but that's it. No fever, nothing else, no shortness of breath, none of that. And just getting better by the day. Feels like when I had allergies. But we are still in an international pandemic facing a crisis because hospitals are being overwhelmed and many of those people are unvaccinated.
Yeah, let me give you points and let's take it from there. First of all, this Omicron wave is like nothing we've seen before in the sense that it is accelerating at a rate we've never seen before. It is the most transmissible of all of the COVID variants by quite a lot, almost as transmissible as measles, maybe as transmissible, which is the most transmissible virus agent we know. And so that's why you're seeing the steep rise, especially in New York and Washington. And now the hospitalizations are picking up in New York and Washington. There's a buzz out there that's saying Omicron may not be as serious as the previous lineages like Delta, et cetera. I don't think that's the case. I think it's probably going to be as serious among the unvaccinated for reasons that we can go into. But we are starting to see hospitalizations in New York and Washington, and it's going to be across the country. That's point one. Almost all of those hospitalizations are going to be among people who've not been vaccinated. The number that's about out there is about 85, 87% of the severe illness and deaths are among the unvaccinated. The others mostly among the partially vaccinated. So we'll see that same pattern again. But here's the second hit we're going to face right now. Because this is so transmissible, and we are seeing that the booster shot is not quite as effective as the other boosters, as was pointed out. It's as effective at preventing death or serious illness, but it's not as effective at preventing symptomatic infection. So the problem that we face, this very unique wave, is that in addition to unvaccinated piling into the hospitals and ICUs, the healthcare workers, a lot of them are going to get breakthrough symptomatic infection even after their booster, which is not going to land them in the hospital, but it's going to keep them at home and out of the workforce. So you're going to see, we've already had a depletion of our healthcare workforce over the last 2 years for a lot of reasons, for attrition and burnout and all of the other factors that we've been hearing about. But on top of that, we're going to knock out an additional big segment of the workforce. And we know that mortality, death rates really climb when hospitals are going to get overwhelmed. And so that's what I'm worried about. It's going to be the unvaccinated piling into hospitals, and there's not going to be enough doctors, nurses, respiratory therapists to take care of them. And you're going to see mortality really start to climb. Two other things, and then I'll stop, which is the other thing we're finding is with this highly mutated virus, 2 of the 3 monoclonal antibodies that we have are not working. So we're not going to have as many treatment options. That Paxlovid medicine from Pfizer, forget it. It's not going to be ready in time for this wave. It's going to take months before we have enough of it. So we've got a lot of vulnerabilities, and our only real hope is that we persuade the unvaccinated to start getting vaccinated now, get that vaccination series. Otherwise, we're going to repeat what we've already just experienced. And what we've just experienced, Roland, and you alluded to it, is that since June 1 of this year, over the last 6 months, 200,000 unvaccinated Americans have needlessly lost their lives because they refused COVID vaccines, including the first death that we've had from Omicron last night in Houston, an individual who was infected and recovered, but decided not to get vaccinated on top of it because Omicron can cause reinfections very easily. So that 200,000 number of people who threw their lives away because they refused to get vaccinated over the last 6 months, that number is scheduled to double now, between now and the first quarter of 2022. To 400,000 Americans whose lives could have been saved, but they chose not to get vaccinated. And so that's why I'm here late on a Thursday evening before Christmas to work with you, Roland, to do whatever we can to get people to get vaccinated.
So, Doctor, explain this. Why, again, Faraji brought up an example of someone who he knows, or he heard an example of someone who had a side effect as a result of getting the booster. There are people who are afraid to take the vaccines. There are others, the people who have been mocking me, doing videos saying, "Oh, look, here he is out here touting the vaccine, and he got COVID himself." And I keep explaining to people, the vaccine was never designed to prevent someone from actually getting COVID. And so if there's somebody who's sitting here who's saying, "I'm unvaccinated, I'm not doing it, my family's not doing it," just lay out the risks that are involved.
Well, the risk is, as I say, overwhelmingly the people who are dying in this pandemic right now are those who are unvaccinated. So you would take a huge chance to joining to your 200,000 fellow Americans who also refused to get vaccinated and lost their lives since June 1, because I say that number is now projected to double. Here's what happens if you get vaccinated. If you get vaccinated, this Omicron variant is got a lot of escape mutations, which means that the vaccines, it's true, are not as effective against Omicron as they were against Delta and Alpha and other previous variants. So what that means is the vaccines now are still saving your life and still keeping you out of the hospital, but they are not always preventing symptomatic infection. It's about 75% protection against symptomatic infection versus Omicron versus 95% versus the previous lineages. So it's still pretty good, not as good. And that's why, Roland, you had a breakthrough symptomatic infection, but you're talking on a national radio broadcast with a cold rather than intubated in an intensive care unit. That's the effect of the vaccine. And so that's the message. You've got to get vaccinated, and we have to stop this business of saying you've been infected and recovered, you don't need to get vaccinated. That's just one of the phony anti-vaccine talking points. As I said, we just had our first Omicron death from a person who got infected and recovered and chose not to get vaccinated. So that is the reality.
Reese, go right ahead.
I have a comment for Faraji, but I'll save that for another time. For now, I want to ask Dr. Hotez. So I have an 8-month-old, and I am scheduled for travel. And I feel like the messaging is all over the place. I feel like there's more political messaging about, well, if you're vaccinated, you can, go on ahead and enjoy your time with your family. But then I see all of the doctors and epidemiologists and virologists are like, hair on fire. This is a red alarm, crisis. I'm not asking you to give me specific medical advice, but I guess for those that are potentially traveling with unvaccinated children, based on the modeling that you're seeing, what comfort level would you express with traveling with unvaccinated children over the next 2 weeks?
Yeah, we have seen a lot of happy talk come out of Washington D.C. this week. I was a little surprised by it. When something it's this transmissible, I think there is a pretty good risk if you're going through airports and bus terminals and Uber rides, you're going to be exposed to Omicron. And if I were traveling, and with your baby, who's, you said 8 months old, masking is not really an option. There is risk. And we are seeing pediatric hospitalizations now with this Omicron variant. It was a big problem in South Africa. It was true of the Delta variant here in the South and here in Houston and Texas. Texas Children's Hospitals, which I know Roland knows well, had a lot of pediatric hospital admissions. So I'm not a big fan of traveling with an unvaccinated individual, whether it's because someone's refusing to get vaccinated or because someone's too young to get vaccinated. Let me tell you my own situation at home. So I live in Houston. My oldest daughter lives in LA. She came to see us, and we were going to have my mother-in-law come down. We were going to fly her down from New Jersey and spend a week with us, go to the restaurants, maybe a museum. I disinvited her. And the reason I disinvited her is, in her case, she is fully vaccinated and boosted. But because it's been a while since she got that boost, we know that breakthrough symptomatic illness does go up the further you're out from the boost. And I didn't want to chance it with someone in their 80s, because they won't do as well as Roland did with his breakthrough symptomatic illness. So I said, let's not chance it right now. Let's hold off on this for a while. The hope is that this big wave will go down as fast as it's going up. We don't have strong evidence for it, but there is a possibility. And that would be the best possible outcome, because now that the kids are out of school, they'll be out of school for a few weeks. By the time they're ready to go back through K through 12 or go back to university or college, hopefully we'll be on the downslope of this big wave. No guarantees, but I think that's one possible scenario.
Thank you.
Faraji?
Thank you so much for joining us. So, Doc, talk to us a little bit about, we're hearing all of these different, you're bringing up information about the effectiveness, the efficacy of this vaccine and booster compared, when it comes to Omicron. But how should people look at all of this stuff? Because again, I'm not into going back and forth about vaccinated, unvaccinated. I stay masked up, and I know people that have stayed masked up, and you can still get it. So I'm talking about assuring people of that this situation that we're dealing with can be handled. Because what I'm seeing right now, doctor, is that they're saying that the more that vaccines are being developed, that more variants, more mutations may occur. So can you give us some insight about that, sir?
Yeah,
And
that's actually
and Doc, just as because you may not have been on earlier, where Faraji said that he previously got COVID, but he and his family are not vaccinated. So go ahead.
Yeah, no. So this is one of the kind of the fake talking points that's out there, that they make the claim that vaccines are actually inducing the mutations to cause the variants. Here's the reality. The reality was our worst pandemic threats arose out of unvaccinated populations. So the Alpha variant arose out of an unvaccinated population in southern England in 2020. Delta arose out of an unvaccinated population in India at the beginning of 2021. And Omicron arose out of a mostly unvaccinated population in southern Africa, either South Africa or Botswana, towards the end of this year. And that's why we keep getting these variants, because nobody has come up with a plan to vaccinate the southern hemisphere. The African continent has been left almost totally unvaccinated, about 6%. So that's what we do at our labs. We're making low-cost vaccines for parasitic infections and for COVID. We have a low-cost recombinant protein vaccine. that we've made with no patents. We transferred the technology now to India, Botswana, Indonesia, and Bangladesh. And the one that's furthest along is the one in India with our partners there known as Biological E. And now it'll be released for emergency use authorization. It's the least expensive of the vaccines out there. And it's the same technology as the hepatitis B vaccine. Very few side effects, looks like the best safety profile. And the Indian government is now has ordered 300 million doses. So we're hoping now that this can come in to prevent all of these new variants from emerging. So that's the problem, is the more we allow large populations to go unvaccinated, we'll continue to chase our tail with these variants.
Thank you, sir.
And we actually, in last year, the doctor, the scientist from North Carolina A&T we had on, that was one of the things that he said. He said, we've got to get as many people tested and vaccinated in order to stem these various mutations. He said, because when it jumps from one body to the next, it's going to start mutating left and right. Greg Carr, any question for Doc?
Thank you, Roland. And thank you, Dean Hotez. You've kind of given part of the answer in responding to Faraji's question about this question of a global pandemic and where nobody is safe. And I read your comments on being against travel bans, and it makes perfect sense. Although I can't imagine that the pharmaceutical companies are very happy with you and your team as you're starting to give away proprietary patent to vaccines, but we must get everybody in the world.
I appreciate that point. As I say, is if we had gotten even 10% of the amount of money Moderna had gotten and some of these others, we could have had the world vaccinated by now, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
But that's a different discussion, I guess, for a different day.
No, actually, well, it is actually leads to my question, and I'm glad that you began the answer with answering Faraji. And my question is this: as an educator and one of my best students, former students, is a doctor, pediatrician in Atlanta. And it's very much what you've said there. She's confirming that what she's seeing in Atlanta. My question is, what do you see happening in the first quarter of 2022 as it relates to schools? K-12, higher ed. Are we looking at another shutdown in this country?
Boy, I sure hope not, because I don't think our kids could handle it. And as a parent of formerly young kids, now they're adults, I know I couldn't have handled it. We've got to get our kids back in school. So I'm really, really hoping that we get this big wave way down, because I don't know that as a nation, we need our kids in schools. If you remember a couple of days ago, the U.S. Surgeon General, Vivek Murthy, I think is an excellent Surgeon General, came out with a report on the mental health impact of this COVID-19 pandemic on our kids. And it's just devastating. And it's not only because of the classroom education, but remember, you all know better this than anyone that in many of our inner city schools, that school is the place where you go get breakfast, or you go get lunch, or you get your mental health counseling. And so the impact of not having kids in school is just multiplied times 4 or 5. So we've got to make that a priority.
All right, so Doc, so here's a question that I have, and again, just trying to understand this. Okay, so my first symptoms showed up last Wednesday. It was a scratchy throat, and then the next day I had chills, had a fever. Tested negative on Thursday, did one of the rapid tests, and then they said the next one would take 36 hours after that. On Saturday, I tested positive. And so I came back. I was in Atlanta. I came back.
By the way, that's a pretty common story. So this is one of the interesting things about Omicron. There seems to be a lag between. So when you're first infected, the PCR is positive, but your antigen test is negative because there's still not enough virus there. And then it comes up after that. So that's actually not surprising. So you had the rapid home test was probably the antigen test that was a false negative because you had the virus. That's not surprising, but the PCR came back positive.
Right. And so then I got home to Virginia on Sunday and went into quarantine. So the 10-day period, is that at the beginning of symptoms or when you test positive? And then how do you know, like what needs to happen for you to come out? So is it complete stuffiness gone? Is it no cough? Or so how do you?
I believe the recommendations are 10 days from your first onset of symptoms, plus you have to be at least 24 hours with no symptoms at all.
Got
so
it.
you have to meet those two criteria.
Got
now,
it. Meaning no cough, no stuffiness, nothing like that.
Right. Now, I mean, I can check it as well, but I mean, it's also a moving goalpost because the CDC just made a change tonight for the healthcare providers, and I have to make certain it doesn't extend to other groups, which is that now they're saying, because we can't afford to have their healthcare workers out of the workforce for 10 days. So now, so in the UK, what they did is now after 7 days, if you test negative, you can go back to work. And I think they require 2 tests. But in the US, they're going to require a single test. So you can go back to work after 7 days. And that just came out literally within the last hour, I think.
Now, what I was told is that even when I come out, I still might test positive for 2 or 3 weeks, but I'm no longer contagious. Explain
that's
that.
right, because that PCR test is so sensitive, it's picking up remnants of the virus genome. So even though you're not shedding enough virus to infect people, you might still be positive. And that's the reason why we often recommend not testing again, because you could be testing positive literally for weeks.
So when should I take a test?
You don't. That's unless you start feeling sick again, and then
so the most important thing is that all symptoms are gone, meaning there's no longer a cough, there's no longer slight stuffiness, all that's gone.
Pretty much, yeah. And then you should be good. You don't need to get tested again, because if you get tested again, it creates a lot of confusion. Then you could be positive, but you're you're still not shedding virus, and then yeah, I would just hold off and not test again if you're not having symptoms after 10 days.
So the last point here for you is that for everybody who's watching, who's listening, the advice is that if you are unvaccinated, you're putting yourself and others at serious risk of
hospitalization and death. But Roland, there's one other thing that nobody talks about, which I want to bring up, and that is we don't talk enough about long COVID, where your symptoms linger for sometimes a year in terms of not fever and acute symptoms like a runny nose, but you feel fatigue, you have heart palpitations, you feel tightness in your chest. We're learning a lot about that, and there's a very important study that was published this year out of the United Kingdom. The United Kingdom has a real health system, unlike the U.S., where we have Amazon Pharmacy, and that study, they have 40,000 MRIs on file. Everybody who had an MRI, it's registered in the UK system. This is pre-pandemic, and then they can bring them back now that they've had COVID to compare before and afterwards, and it's showing some pretty frightening stuff like gray matter brain degeneration, and the MRI your brain scan looks like somebody who's 20 years older, associated with cognitive decline. And that's the other piece we don't talk about. It's not only piling into hospitals, into ICUs. This could be with you for years, and especially if you're a young person, you don't want this happening where you've got gray matter brain degeneration and cognitive decline when you're trying to start a family or a new job or taking your SATs or trying to get a mortgage on your house. And so that's going to haunt us for a long time as well. Yet another reason to get vaccinated.
Last question, Doc. The infusion, I did get that. It was the Regeneron when I was in Atlanta. Do you also recommend that if people get a positive COVID test, they're able to find a place that does it, that they get they get that infusion?
Up until 2 weeks ago, I would have said yes, but now the problem is this: with this Omicron variant, that's going to be the overwhelming one. That Regeneron monoclonal antibody probably is not going to do much for you, and neither is the one from Lilly. So that's what I mean. 2 of our monoclonal antibodies have been knocked out in terms of being useful for this Omicron variant. And that only leaves the one from what's known as Vir and GlaxoSmithKline, and there's not a lot of it around. So this is, again, why we need to get vaccinated. We kind of lost one of our major weapons, monoclonal antibodies. We won't have that Paxlovid medicine from Pfizer. So we don't have a lot of, we've lost some really, we've either don't have or have lost some really important tools. It's just a reminder why you need to get vaccinated. And even if you've been infected and recovered, like our friend that I was speaking to, we need to get that person vaccinated, because that's the only way to really prevent Omicron reinfection and prevent all of the things that we're talking about.
Gotcha. So this is the last question. So you just said that. So first of all, I've taken a PCR, so I don't know if I got Omicron or what is it. It's just simply assumption.
Yeah, the PCR won't tell you. It's a specialty kind of genomic testing that they're not doing it on everybody. But.
So now that I've had this, can you get Omicron again?
Probably won't get Omicron again, but you may want to get another booster down the line, depending on how things go. They haven't come out with that recommendation yet.
Well, I can't. Well, because I got the infusion, I can't do a booster for 90 days.
For 90 days, that's
so
right.
I have to wait until March.
Right, that's right.
But trust me, when March hits, I will be getting a booster.
So let's just go through a few brief scenarios. If you're unvaccinated at all, you're asking for trouble. Get your vaccine series. If you've gotten 2 doses of either the Pfizer or Moderna vaccine, get that booster, because that booster can make the difference between going to the hospital or not. If you are infected and recovered and you've not gotten vaccinated, get vaccinated. If I'm starting to sound like a broken record here, it's deliberate. It's get vaccinated, get vaccinated, get vaccinated. And by the way, if your kids are 5 and up, get them vaccinated too. So we're doing a terrible job vaccinating our kids.
All right. Doc, we certainly appreciate you coming on again. Dr. Peter Hotez, co-director of the Center for Vaccine Development at the Great Texas Children's Hospital in Houston. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Roland. I know you come to Houston a lot and you're not visiting me. So once this apocalypse is over, I want to show you around our labs, how we're making vaccines for COVID, and show you all the changes that have happened over our Great Texas.
That'll absolutely happen. I was home I was in Houston for Thanksgiving, and I was planning to go home to Dallas. My parents live in my home there for Christmas, but I got diagnosed, and then my sister did, who lives there. So I said, well, heck, if I didn't, I wouldn't be able to go back home. Would go home anyway. So
right. Well, the other reason is I want to give you a big hug, because you've been one of the really strong voices in the African American community that is really pushed for science-driven, evidence-based COVID prevention measures, and you're worth your weight in gold. You're just a great man.
I appreciate it, and trust me, I will be coming back home to H-Town real soon. Doc, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye,
everybody.
All right. Thanks a bunch. That is it for us. Any final comment, Faraji, Reese, Greg?
I do. I have a final comment.
Go right ahead.
I just wanted to respond, Faraji. I know we're always on your case, but you made a comment about sheeple and shuffling. And let me tell you, Faraji, I will Cupid shuffle, I will cha-cha slide, I will electric slide for my booster every 6 months. And if they say 3 months, whatever it is, because I am able to protect my baby, or partially protect her, through breastfeeding. And it's important to me to keep her as safe as possible, because she ain't nowhere near, unfortunately, getting the vaccine. But I also want to comment on the sheeple part too, because 65% of the disinformation and misinformation out there about the vaccines is from what they call the disinformation dozens. And Robert F. Kennedy Jr., with his so-called Children's Health Defense, is the main purveyor of disinformation, and it targets the Black community. I did an article about this and wrote about it in the Griot. And his own wife, now this is a staunch anti-vaxxer. His wife is Cheryl Hines, who's on Curb Your Enthusiasm. When they had a party at their home, she requested that people be vaccinated or testing. So I think it's really strange that the biggest anti-vaxxer purveyor in the Black community, or towards the Black community, is married to a person who wants people to be vaccinated that come through their home. So I will throw my lot in with world-renowned scientists and virologists and epidemiologists and experts throughout the entire world, the global medical community, before I throw my lot in Robert F. Kennedy Jr. and his BS. So I'm not, everybody do what they gonna do. But when you talk about sheeple, shuffling, Cupid shuffle, I will do all of that when it comes to doing my part in staying the hell out the hospital and staying the hell out the grave. Respectfully. I still love you, Faraji, but I just because you said sheeple, I was like, okay, well, it was the sheeple part coming in. I had to say that respectfully.
Hey, I hear you, and that's certainly your choice, and I'm gonna respect your choice just as much as you respect my choice. So,
I absolutely do.
I really, for me, God willing, we'll be able to get through this, and then learn the lessons from it. Man, I don't want to see anybody die. I certainly don't want to die, but I don't want to put anybody's lives at risk. That's why my children, I mask up, and my family, we mask up everywhere we go. We keep our distance. We don't go out to a lot of places. So, we're still doing our part to make sure that we're being responsible about taking care of other people's lives. But, in this whole, as I was listening to Dr. Hortez, in this whole situation, I really hope and pray that we can get through this, not just our bodies, but also our minds, because a lot of people are being, misguided. And like you said, disinformation is so rampant right now. So, I have my faith and hope that we're going to get through this, but I hope that we get through this with the right mindset and to walk out of this with sanity and great substance, as the scriptures say, because that's what we're going to need to get through.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Greg Carr, final comment.
Yeah, I'd just say, Roland, I agree. We have to be together on this. And for all the folk out there who are teachers, substitute teachers, kindergarten teachers, we heard Dean Hotez say this. The emotional impact of coming into spaces where these children have been under a 2-year assault in many ways. It's taken its emotional toll on all of us. So those of you out there in the next couple of days who are delivering UPS packages and working for the mail service, be as careful as you can and know that not only are you in our thoughts and prayers, we must protect each other. And I'd only say a couple of other things. We're 3 days away from the first day of Kwanzaa, so Habari Ghani, the 26th will be Umoja. So it's happy holidays to everybody. And I'm looking forward, Roland, to your thoughts and commentary on Franklin Thomas. I know we didn't get to that tonight. If we heard the name Vernon Jordan and haven't heard the name Franklin Thomas, understand that this brother, who was the first Black person to run the Ford Foundation, had a great impact. The son of Barbados immigrants who came here, who was born here, Bed-Stuy, do or die. Look up Franklin A. Thomas, and I'm looking forward to hearing you have some comments on that, brother. And please, get well, brother. See, I ain't never got to see nobody again. I will stay here. I got plenty of reasons. but when watching you last week at the Celebration Bowl, that beautiful moment, and then you have to face this thing, brother. All I'm saying is, you not only in our thoughts and prayers, we got to wrap around each other, man, because that's no joke. And thank you for being very public and sharing that. And hopefully that's going to change somebody's mind about getting this vaccine.
Well, look, it was a lot of people. I can tell you, there are a number of people who I know who called me, who have tested positive, who are very public individuals who chose not to go public, and they were commending me. And look, I had no problem doing it. You got some loud mouths out there who decide to make videos and mocking me for getting it. This is why I call them hashtag never will be's, because they will never be anything, and that's what they are. They are people who are desperate for credibility, and they have none. They will never get any. And you heard what Dr. Hotez said there, and that was always our goal here, and that is I was not going to put conspiracy theorists on the air. I was not going to put people who are so-called educated but have no scientific or medical expertise on this subject matter. There are people, and I see some of the comments, people like, Roland, do your own research. Y'all, this ain't what I do. Okay? That ain't what I do. I'm sitting here in my home studio, and I'm surrounded by multiple lights. I've got a 9-foot green screen. I got a Sony camera in front of me. I got an ATM mini switcher sitting right here. I've got an iPad and got a computer. I got a lavalier microphone. I got an IFB. That's what I do. That's what I do.
That's right.
Okay? And so just because somebody can read a medical journal doesn't mean they're actually an expert on these issues. We purposely put on experts. We started this show off with legal experts talking about the Kim Powder trial. Y'all notice I did not have non-lawyers breaking down the legal ramifications of Kim Potter being found guilty. There's a reason why. You notice we had Cliff Albright, an expert on the issue of voting, co-founder of Black Voters Matter. And so it's amazing to me how we love to listen to folks. And let me just go ahead and say this, and I got no problem saying it. If there is one troubling thing among Black people, is we love people with rhetorical flourishes. We love people who can spin yarns. We love people with alliteration. We love people who have the ability to talk and speak. And oh my God. So what we do is we base our, oh my man, that brother is dropping some knowledge. That sister is dropping some knowledge. No, they're actually saying a whole bunch of stuff, but it sounds good. We love folks to as a tickle your fancy, let me ignite your soul, as the song goes. But this is too serious for us to play games with. When we hear, Congressman Jim Clyburn announced last night that he tested positive for COVID. He's 81 years old. When Professor Eddie Glaude at Princeton announced 6 hours ago on social media that he tested positive as well. When you see doctors and others and medical professionals, I mean, this is real. And if there is one moment for us to trust our trusted voices, it is it. This is it.
That's right.
And so we're going to have more and more of our Black doctors and our experts on. Everything that you heard tonight about these variants, listen, the brother from North Carolina A&T told us this May of last year.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. That's right.
And so we're going to continue talking to the folks at Meharry and the folks at Xavier and the folks at other HBCUs, because this is why it is important. Last night we had that expert on COVID and sickle cell. Okay, you ain't hearing that elsewhere. So I need y'all to understand why this show matters, why these voices matter. And so some of you have hit me, Dr. Ebony Hilton, because she now is a signed contributor for MSNBC, NBC. That's why you haven't seen her on the show, because they have her exclusively. And so we certainly miss her voice. But there are other doctors out there that we're going to continue to have on to amplify the voices. We're going to continue talking about not only the quality of mask, what kind of mask to wear, things along those lines. And so folks expect more of that. And that's why these shows matter. And we cannot simply cede any ground. And I will not cede any ground, any territory. I'll be like Shema, one of David's mighty men, fighting over a field of lentils when it comes to correct information and swinging against some of these crazy fools out here who do not have your best interest at heart, who are nothing but grifters. They are TikTok doctors. They are YouTube scientists. They know nothing, and all they do, the best thing they have for you, are bad lace fronts and loud mouth rhetorical flourishes, and they dress clean and they sit here and use all the right words, and they say my brother, my sister, as if they actually care about you. But nobody can dare say they care about you if they are feeding you false information. Too many people are dying, and I don't want to have to do another story on a brother and sister who has died as a result of faulty information. And so that's why we're going to do what we do all day, every day. And so to Greg, Reese, and Faraji, I appreciate it. To all of our guests, thank you so very much. Folks, we do not have a show tomorrow. It's Christmas Eve. We were never going to have a show tomorrow anyway. So I'll see you guys on Monday. Hopefully, I will be out of COVID protocol. I can then go upstairs and then actually see my wife versus FaceTiming her. And then, of course, and her leaving stuff for me at the top of the stairs. And then that kind of stuff. But it's all good, because y'all got to understand, I am a self-sufficient brother. I was taught how to bake when I was 7 years old, and cook when I was 7, bake when I was 7, cook when I was 8. So it's all good being down here. And so I ain't got no problem being by myself. This ain't the first time. So I know how to cook for myself, wash for myself. and do for myself because Reginald and Imelda Martin knew how to raise their kids. So just letting y'all know. Yeah, know how to do for self. Just letting y'all know. And I am working on my golf game down here, my putting greens over here as well. So don't think for a second my golf game is going to go to pop because of COVID. Y'all, see y'all tomorrow. Y'all take care. Oh! Folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
Oh, no punches! Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way.
Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all. I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be Black-owned media and be scared.
You dig? Today, President Joe Biden went before the cameras to talk about the Omicron variant. The cases are exploding all across the country as folks are testing positive as a result. This is what he had to say from the White House.
That lay out the steps the Vice President and I are taking to prepare for the rising number of cases experts tell us we can expect in the weeks ahead. First, how concerned should you be about Omicron, which is now the dominant variant in this country, and it happened so quickly? The answer is straightforward. If you're not fully vaccinated, you have good reason to be concerned. You're at a high risk of getting sick. And if you get sick, you're likely to spread it to others, including friends and family. The unvaccinated have a significantly higher risk of ending up in a hospital or even dying. Almost everyone who has died from COVID-19 in the past many months has been unvaccinated. Unvaccinated. But if you're among the majority of Americans who are fully vaccinated, and especially if you've gotten the booster shot, that third shot, you have much less reason to worry. You have a high degree of protection against severe illness. But because Omicron spreads so easily, we'll see some fully vaccinated people get COVID, potentially in large numbers. There will be positive cases in every office, even here in the White House, among the vaccinated from Omicron. But these cases are highly unlikely to lead to serious illness. Vaccinated people who get COVID may get ill, but they're protected from severe illness and death. That's why you should still remain vigilant. According to our doctors, even if you're fully vaccinated, you should wear a mask when indoors and in public settings. Now, let me tell you about the additional steps I'm ordering today to take on what is coming. I know you've heard a lot of this in the news already this morning. 3 weeks ago, I laid out a COVID-19 action plan for this winter that prepared us for this moment. Today, we're making the plan even stronger. First, we're setting up our vaccination and booster efforts. We're stepping it up significantly. In the past 2 weeks, we've seen the highest vaccination rates since last spring. And we aren't as vaccinated as a country as we should be, though. That's why we have added 10,000 new vaccination sites on top of the 80,000 sites that we already had in place. And even more will open in January. You know, there's some parts of this country where people are very eager to get their booster, where it's harder to get an appointment, So starting this week, I'll be deploying hundreds more vaccinators and more sites to help get the booster shots in people's arms. I've ordered FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, to stand up new pop-up vaccination clinics all across the country where you can get that booster shot. We've opened, we've opened FEMA vaccination sites in Washington State and New Mexico recently as cases have increased. And today, I'm directing FEMA to stand up new sites in areas where there is a high demand. These steps are going to help us add more and more booster appointments and just over the next few weeks. I also want to say a word to parents. If your children are not vaccinated, please get them vaccinated. If you're a parent, understandably, who waited to see how the first shots went with other kids before getting your own kid vaccinated, you can stop waiting. 6 million children in our country, ages 5 to 11, are vaccinated. Get your children protected today, now. And for those parents out there who have a child that's too young to be vaccinated, that is under the age of 5,
All right, folks, let's go right to my next guest. She is out of Silver Spring, Maryland, Dr. Melissa Clark. She's a co-founder of LAC Coalition Against COVID. Dr. Clark, glad to have you here. And so let's talk about.
Hi, Roland. That's the Black Coalition Against COVID.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. They had this wrong in the script. So let's get right to this whole thing here, because this is where I'm sort of confused right now. A couple of weeks ago, the White House was challenged on about sending home COVID tests. Oh, it can't be done. It's going to be too costly. Here we are 2 weeks later, now saying it's going to be done. Now they're announcing they're increasing COVID testing sites. Okay, I'm just trying to understand why weren't these increases in place? Why are we talking about 2 weeks later? I mean, what I'm not understanding is why are we not throwing everything at this? Do you think that what America has done, we will sort of say, okay, you know what, things are getting better, let's just all back off, and then now when there's a spike, now it's like, oh my God, what do we do now? Let's ramp up. If we maintain a high level, maybe we're not going to see an explosion in cases.
Well, you know, certainly, I'm glad to be here, Roland, and that's an excellent question. You know, there has been sort of a gradual ramp up. And let me say, first of all, thank God there is a plan, because we are definitely better than we were a year ago when there was no plan. And there has been gradual ramp up of testing capacity, approving home tests. But you're absolutely right. We saw the Omicron variant. We saw how rapidly it was expanding through Europe and certain parts of Africa. And the fact that there are lines of people trying to get home test kits right now could have been foreseen. That being said, I do believe that the parts of his plan that deal with testing are commendable, with the exception, I have a little bit concern about that online, going online to get test kits. There really needs to be equity in every policy. And so for those people who don't have broadband access,
there you go.
We saw that debacle when it came to going online to schedule for your vaccines back in February and March and April. So why repeat that same issue? we know how to reach those people in neighborhoods that have low broadband. We have community-based institutions and organizations like the Black Church, like community centers and recreation centers and elementary schools that could serve as distribution points. We have community-based organizations that could deploy and go door to door to deliver those tests in areas that have low broadband. We need to roll out these plans at the same time as the online testing to ensure that every American really is able to get access to those tests.
And not only that, you know, so their thinking is, well, for those households that want the test, they have to request it. And you're right, people are not sitting here only going online. So guess what? Set up a basic phone number, set up a hotline for folks to be able to call.
Exactly.
And then they should be dropping those PSAs, or you know, and you know, buying airtime from Black-owned media and others to encourage folks to get these home tests.
And not just get them, how to take them. We're in the process of developing videos for how to make sure that you know how to use the home test, because it's a 5-step process. Not everybody has the same ability, health literacy ability to understand the instructions and execute it correctly. So, you know, there's more to it than just, you know, making the test available online.
Absolutely. And so, you know, I think this is important. And also, I think what has to happen is this is just, I think as a country, we've got to, frankly, be at DEFCON 5, if you will, whatever the highest level, and say we're going to stay there for the minimum next 2 years. Because see, this whole yo-yo, this whole thing, oh, let's open up, things are getting better, oh my God, we got to pull back, whatever. That, to me, that is also what contributes to where we are, because people get lackadaisical. Folks just sort of begin to you know, just, oh, you know, everything is going fine. We saw the rush for folks wanting to back with football games and basketball games and concerts, and now we're seeing what's turning into super spreader events. I mean, I'm seeing, you know, look, I'm sitting here in quarantine right now for testing positive, and just more and more people are doing it every single day, and the numbers are climbing.
Yeah, and I think, you know, there's been an effort to balance people's mental well-being, our economic well-being, and our public health well-being. But I think the messaging around that has to constantly say these situations are fluid and changing. Because once you take away a mask mandate, it's really hard to reinstitute it. Just as you said, people's behaviors lag behind the advice. And when they lag behind the advice, that's when you see rapid increases in cases taking off like we see now. But it's still really important to be very careful in public spaces in terms of wearing your mask. Even in small, you know, getting together with your friends and teenagers that are having sleepovers, these kinds of things can quickly become super spreader events, especially if people are not vaccinated and boosted.
Yeah, but you still got these people who say masks don't work. I can't tell you how I keep seeing these folks all over social media. People with significant followings who say, why are we doing these masks? There's no proof they actually work.
There is plenty of proof that they actually work. We see states and communities that have carried out the mask mandates. We see that rates of cases and case spread are much lower when you compare on a macro level from community to community. They definitely work. And I know those same people have not been in the trenches with healthcare workers, seeing the cases overrun hospitals and people being put on ventilators, because I guarantee you they would change their mind when they see how devastating it can be to contract a severe case of COVID and potentially die. They work.
Well, I think it's a whole lot of stuff that we certainly have to do. Any questions for my guest, Mustafa Demario Xavier?
Well, I want to thank the sister for the great work she's doing. She talked about equity and everything. And you made a great point when you talked about needing another way to have access to our community. Everyone is on email. You know, at our organization, Justice for Greenwood, we had to set up a hotline just for that reason, because some of the older people that we're trying to impact, they don't use email. They're not getting online by themselves. And we know our community, older people are at higher risk. So I think that is very important to have those important voices like yours, Doc, making sure that our people understand what the issue is and how we can access and have actual access to the life-saving maneuvers. One of my clients and partners, Dr. Tiffany Crutcher, yesterday, on the 14th, her mother, a year ago on the 14th, went into the hospital with COVID, and she never made it out. And we talked about that yesterday because she was right there on the day when the vaccinations were coming on market, but she got sick beforehand. So we don't want to see that happen to anyone else in this country.
Absolutely not. And another thing that I often hear on social media is, well, why should I get vaccinated? Because people are getting sick who get vaccinated anyway. And what I always say is, when you're going out into sub-zero weather, you're going to want to layer up. You're going to want to have your long johns, your sweaters, and your down coat. That represents mass physical distancing and a vaccine. Are you going to feel cold? Sure, you'll probably feel cold, but you're not going to die of hypothermia. You're not going to get frostbite as if you were going out there naked with nothing on, which is basically what you're doing, especially in this Omicron wave, with how contagious it is. It's 3 times contagious, more contagious than Delta, which was 3 times more contagious than the previous variants. So it's incredibly contagious. And even though there's some evidence that there might be a little bit more mild disease, we don't know that yet. We don't know across the board how it's going to affect all populations. So it's really important now, more than ever before, to have all those layers in place, especially vaccination and boosting. And my heart goes out to Dr. Crutcher and her mother, certainly. We don't want to see that happen to any other family in the United States.
What mask should we be using? Because I've seen other doctors who have been saying the last several days, folks, get rid of those cloth masks. They're not working. So what mask should we be using?
So cloth masks were deployed just as an interim step because we could not ramp up mask manufacturing quickly enough to ensure that every American had a supply of masks. Now that we have the KN95 masks and the N95 masks available in drugstores and other retail outlets, those are what people should be using.
So KN and N95 are fine.
Yes, absolutely. And surgical masks. And if you only have one surgical mask, or I should say, if you're using a surgical mask, it's important to double up on the surgical mask because that makes them more effective. Or if you have a cloth mask and a surgical mask, double up.
Xavier or Mustafa?
Yeah, when I keep thinking about our seniors and the technology gap that's there and the information gap that's there, and getting them vaccinated and then getting them boosted with the changing of information. Roland talked about the going back and forth. How do we get information to our seniors to make sure that they are on board with the information that they're receiving to be protected? And also, we don't even know, I don't necessarily think they're aware of the proper mask, and how do we get proper campaign out to our communities that have been hesitant and then now may feel even more distrustful, particularly of the government, of different age groups based on the changes and what's going on with Omicron.
So one of the things that has been happening that doesn't get a lot of attention is there have been a number of initiatives across the country thinking outside the box in how to reach hard hit and hard to reach communities. I've been a part of that. My company is called the Be Health Empowered Group. And I'm a founder of the Black Coalition Against COVID. And we've worked with an organization called Choose Healthy Life and the Leadership Council for Healthy Communities to train 120 people across the country that are in faith institutions to go out and knock on doors and have events and talk about vaccination. there are phone trees in place through many of our churches now and faith institutions to actually try to reach some of the harder to reach communities, like some of our older Americans. And in addition, there are also other agencies like the Department of Aging in various cities that are also participating in some of these outreach opportunities to older adults. For example, going door to door for people who are shut in to offer vaccinations. So there is a lot of work being done behind the scenes. Could more be done? Could more funding be available? Absolutely. But the infrastructure is in place to really try to reach those harder to reach communities.
Mustafa?
Doctor, thank you so much for what your organization does and yourself as well. You know, I've lost multiple people to COVID-19. My family lost the first individual in West Virginia. The first person to die was an African-American woman. And I'm curious, even when we went through that, it still took some work to get the rest of the family to make sure that they got vaccinated. So my question is, do we need to have some type of accountability partners inside of our families, inside of our organizations, to make sure not only the folks who are not yet vaccinated are vaccinated, but also then staying engaged to get people to make sure they get the boosters?
I think that is an excellent suggestion, because frankly, people respond to the individuals who they trust, the individuals who are closest to them, and family accountability partners, friend accountability partners, I think is an excellent method to do it. There are plenty of voices that are out here, mine included, that have, you know, been talking to people for months on end, trying to dismantle the disinformation, which really is the enemy. The disinformation that's out there is the enemy. And people tend to build these echo chambers of disinformation around themselves because social media, as we know, serves up to you exactly what you want to hear based on your history. So really breaking through that bubble of disinformation is really what we have to do for our community, which, you know, we know is mistrustful and has reasons to be mistrustful of a government that has seemed to never want to do right by us, now saying, oh, here's this great vaccine that's going to help you out. But we have to understand that this is a worldwide pandemic. This is being offered to everybody, and it has clearly been shown to keep people out of the hospital and keep them from dying overwhelmingly.
All right, then. Well, I certainly appreciate the work that you are doing, Dr. Melissa Clark. Thank you so very much with the Black Coalition Against COVID. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you all. Be safe and happy holidays.
Back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
Time to be smart.
Roland Martin's doing this every day.
No punches. Thank you, Roland Martin, for always giving voice to the issues.
Look for Roland Martin in the whirlwind, to quote Marcus Garvey again.
The video looks phenomenal, so I'm really excited to see it on my big screen.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and Black-owned media and something like CNN.
I got to defer to the brilliance of Dr. Carr and to the brilliance of the Black Star Network.
I am rolling with Roland all the way. Honored to be on a show that you own. A black man owns the show.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
I'm real revolutionary right now. Roland was amazing on there.
Stay black. I love y'all. I can't commend you enough about this platform that you've created for us to be able to share who we are, what we're doing in the world, and the impact that we're having.
Let's be smart. Bring your eyeballs home.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
You dig?